Welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, live at IBIE, catering to the latest in ingredient trends, consumer insights, and food news. Brought to you by Corbion.
Hello and welcome to a Fresh Perspective podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything food. We are live in Las Vegas at IBIE, and I'm here with Dave Charest, Senior Vice President of Sustainable Food Services at Corbion. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Welcome to the
How's it going, Jenny?
podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dave and I are here today to talk about natural mold inhibition. So we're really trying to redefine expectations for a mold-free shelf life.
That's right.
And I think that's a really interesting concept simply because people have been doing it with chemicals for years.
That's right. Forever. That's right.
So tell me a little bit about, how do you compare the two between natural and chemical?
Right. So on the natural side, we start with nature's natural defense mechanisms, right?
Okay.
So these organisms are working in an environment we can't see, and they compete with each other. So they have these natural metabolites that they produce to outcompete the other organisms like mold, for example. Oh. And so if you take a look at what's been used for years, it's usually cheap and effective. So something like for bakery, calcium propionate or Calpro.
Okay, sure.
It works very well. It comes from petroleum industry. That's where you start with that, and then you synthesize this. And so it doesn't have much of a taste to it. It works very well, but also like in other countries, it may have an E number, has to be labeled as a preservative.
Okay.
With natural mold inhibitors, we're coming from different types of plant-based like extracts or ferments and leveraging nature's natural capabilities and defense mechanisms.
So that's incredible. So you're literally talking about something that grows from the ground that we can extract to stop mold from happening.
That's right.
Without having to put chemicals in our food.
Yes.
Isn't that what everybody wants?
Absolutely. And in fact, so if you look at global data, they did a study very recently, and what they showed was 61% of parents are looking for ingredients from their children or products that have a natural label to them. So that shows it's growing more and more every year. At the show here, we see so many people coming in looking for a natural mold inhibitor, something to replace Calpro or sorbic acid. And so, it's really growing, and the technology is also catching up. So in the early days of this, you might have something that was natural, but it didn't taste very good. It didn't really work that well, and it didn't give the type of shelf life that people are expecting and processors and bakers are expecting to see in their foods, right? So they have long distribution channels, and so they need that extra shelf life just to be able to get fresh product out to the customers.
Right. And I would assume that your goal is to have it taste just like straight fresh food, right? With no flavor. I would expect that you would want it to have none.
That's right. And that's difficult. So if you start with a plant extract, you have some of the natural flavor compounds in there. If you start with a fermentation, so like bread's a fermentation, beer's a fermentation, you have different dairy products that are fermentation, and they produce metabolites. Some of them are organic acids, and they have their own sort of unique flavor. You might have a diacetyl coming from a fermentation. That's like a buttery flavor.
Oh, okay.
And then you could also have some off flavors. So depending on how you control your microorganisms, how you control the downstream process and the drying process, you could get some pretty nasty compounds that smell like fish or smell like a wet basement. And we were talking to some customers here at the show. Exactly. So if you don't control it and you have a protein in there, and then you cook that during the evaporation and heating process to dry it into a powder so that it's easy to use, you can get some really interesting flavors that are undesirable. So what we try to do is control that in the microorganisms, in the downstream processes, and the raw materials that we use.
Nice. So our R&D people are looking at those things and ensuring that they're usable and people don't hate them.
Oh my gosh, yes. So we've done hundreds of bakes in the lab, comparing our ingredients to other ingredients. We compare to synthetic ingredients as well.
Oh, okay.
So we'll run a number of different treatments there, and then we have our sensory panels come in, and we do the subjective analysis, and then we use some equipment in the labs, in our analytical labs, to be able to do more objective types of analysis and compare the two and line them up so that we can correlate what we're doing in our factories where we do the fermentation to what we're tasting in the end.
Nice. So we're leaving no stone unturned.
That's right.
I mean, to make sure that we get it right, and we get it right every single time.
And that's what we do at Corbion. So we're backed by science, right? So everything we do, we have data to back it up, and we like to show that to customers. They don't want to buy black boxes, right?
Right.
And so many companies will come with a black box and without a lot of data behind it. And so we really know our processes because we're basic in the fermentation. We also have our great scientists, many of whom are here at the show.
Yes.
And we engage our sales, our scientists, our business developers, all in that process to ensure that we have the right product for the customer.
That's incredible. And I would think that does kind of, and I don't want to tease this too much, but we're talking this week a lot about the 360-degree, customer care program. So just a little teaser, we're going to talk about that on a different podcast, but it makes me think of that, right? Because we are looking at every single aspect of this. So
that's right. And two, what happens, so when we go into a customer's operation, they say, look, I need you to help me with this. I need to replace CalPro, or I need to replace this other natural ingredient that just doesn't give us the right flavor profile, what have you.
Right.
And so we work with our people in the labs and the application labs to get the right product for that application, because we have powders, we have liquids, we have different types of raw materials that we use to give the right flavor and performance on shelf life that we need for that particular application, because they're all different, right?
Sure.
And then we also work with our tech service team. So our application team, our tech service team with our 360, Corbion 360 service program to bring everything to bear to help de-risk that customer's transition from the synthetic to the natural.
Because that would be a risk, right?
It's absolutely a risk.
Their customers expect the same, right? They want it to taste the same or better. But so I can see why that would be really important.
Sure.
And the fact that they can work directly with Corbion, when it comes to those kinds of things, is pretty great too. That they could be like, I'm still not getting there. Then we can, help them get to a point where it's all the same, it's all working right, and they're using natural stuff.
Absolutely.
How great is that? And I mean, I say natural stuff because I am not a food scientist, but yeah, I mean, I think that's incredible. So when we talk about, formulation changes and quality and all those things that I can totally see, what about pricing? Is there a major difference then between the chemical version of the mold inhibition and the natural version?
Well, there is. So when you start from petroleum-based chemistries, it's usually quite cheap.
Of course, it would be.
Much lower cost, right? And so because of the large scale that those are made on. And then when you start from natural products, smaller scale fermentations using plant extracts and the like, so you're looking at, farmer costs and harvesting, and then you have some loss along the way, and then you need to kind of extract or, purify or otherwise, remove water and things like this from the process. So the cost is a bit higher, but these are also going into products that have a higher value in the market.
Sure.
Right. So you go from, let's say, a quite affordable product, but then there are certain marketplaces where you want natural ingredients, as I was mentioning with global data.
Right.
And so for those markets, they normally command a higher price. And so you go like clean label, natural, organic. Right, and so organic is many times like twice as much, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I expect when I go to the store.
Right, and so our ingredients cost more, but they're still usually a much lower percentage of the overall cost of the product. So our ingredients are in our customers' products in less than 3 or 4% normally, and usually around 2% or less. So it does cost more, but it fits a piece of the market that those customers are looking for. And our marketing team, with our market insights, helps to shape that and bring that data to the customers, so that helps with their marketing programs and their new launches.
Right, so they can make decisions about what goes on the package. Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so if you are a baker, let's go back to when you were talking about the transition. What types of issues might they come across in that transition? Like, what kind of problems might they see?
Okay. Yeah, so there are a couple. So with something like calcium propionate, it drops in. It's been used for many years.
Okay.
And it's a pure substance. So if you're looking at something like a ferment, like a cultured wheat starch or cultured sugar, cultured dextrose, so these are impure fermentations. So you have, like I mentioned before, the different organic acids and flavor compounds
Right.
that come along with it. So you have to balance the flavor. You may also have to adjust some other ingredients like the sugar or the salt, maybe the mixing times.
Okay.
Sometimes, depending on the product.
Sure.
In many cases, you can enhance the flavor and maybe reduce salt that you're adding into the product. And so, because of some of these changes, in the addition level is normally higher.
Sure.
So you're looking at
I see.
right. So instead of like 0.05% or something like this, you're in like 1% or 2% of the ingredient. So you have to change the formula there.
Yeah.
And that's why our tech service teams are so important to our customers, because we can
Right.
go in and help that, right? We can take a look at the mix times, the proof times. So if you're adding an ingredient that reduces yeast and mold, because yeast and molds usually go together,
Sure.
right? Similar types of organisms, then you may have an effect on the yeast. So you need to tweak that as well.
Right, because you need that part for
Right.
bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
so-
we need to make sure that we have a similar type of performance that you would have with the standard types of solutions.
Okay. Excellent. And the tech services team can help get there.
Absolutely. And yeah, we look at other things like pH. So we also have some modifiers for pH. Many bakeries might use a vinegar or citric. We have some other natural flavors and other ingredients that we can use along with our ferments and extracts to get the right pH without having an off flavor. Because as you
Right.
lower the pH, normally the preservatives work better.
Okay.
So that's
that makes sense.
That's important to control that, and so you have to have maybe pH meters in the plant that might not normally be there, right? With
Okay.
the new technology, so we can help with that as well.
Nice. Excellent. So we only have like 1 minute left.
Oh my gosh!
I know. Time goes so fast. If you're talking to a person that is on the fence about like switching, right? They know what they've got. They've got the petroleum-based stuff. It works. How do you talk to that person? How do you talk to them about natural mold
Right.
inhibition?
So we usually ask a couple questions: what their
Okay.
real goals are, what their launch looks like, when is that happening, the types of products that they're running, right? And then and they might also be thinking about some other ingredients. We're not the only game in town, right?
Sure.
And so what we talk about as well is if they're on the fence and looking at different companies, we're an authentic ingredient supplier. So we do work like making sure that the carbon that's in the product is coming from carbon that's existing on the earth today, not from petroleum carbon, right? And so we
Right.
do authenticity testing on the product. We can provide certificates for that. And we can have customers go to our fermentation facilities to show how we make the product. So we can provide a lot of transparency.
Which is so nice. And that's what you
Absolutely.
want.
Yeah. And so we invite people in. They can work with us side by side in our labs, come to our plants and see what we're doing.
Yes.
So they can also help tell that transparency story
Right.
to their customers as well, kind of food with a story.
Which
so that
who
you can
doesn't
trace
want
it
to
all
know
the
where
way
their
back.
food comes
Exactly.
from and that it is safe, right? And good for your kids and healthy for your
That's right.
families. And so
That's right.
that's excellent. Thank you so much for being here
You're
with me.
welcome. My pleasure.
This has been great. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and preserve what matters.
Thank you for listening to a Fresh Perspective podcast brought to you by Corbion. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on thebakerstake.com and thecorbioncut.com. Until next time, preserve what matters.